Welcome to Imagine 2022, live from the Computer History Museum in Mountain View, California. To start things off, welcome on stage Zach Shelby, Edge Impulse's CEO and co-founder.
Wait a second. This robotics demo is way too cool. We're going to play a little bit with this first. So, Dom, tell me more about this robot. We've actually embedded AI in the robotic arm.
Yeah, sure. So this is a collaborative robot, and we have Ready Robotics Forge OS running. So that's what you're seeing there on that control pendant. And best thing about it, the same interface can connect to 100 models of different industrial robot.
And we're combining sensors in real time, streaming those to an AI model. Like, how does that actually work to then deploy? And then what do we use that for?
Yeah, so well, typically people running robot tasks want to optimize the performance. They want to make sure they're operating normally and don't experience mechanical failures. And one great usage of Forge OS is to get that data out of these robots. And so we've got joint data coming out of all of these joints. We've got a bullet sensor with accelerometer and temperature measuring the condition of the robot. And this is all being streamed into Edge Impulse.
So in real time, we can deploy a model in the factory?
That's correct.
To the robot. And this enables us to do very domain-specific workloads.
Yeah, the beauty of all of this is we can capture data directly from a live robot into an Edge Impulse project, retrain and redeploy very, very quickly.
Amazing. All right, I got a keynote to go to. Thank you, Dom. I'll see you soon.
Thanks, Zach.
I did just de-hand the robot from outside. Seriously, this is the coolest demonstration I've seen in a long time, combining robotics and artificial intelligence all together. And I'm going to tell you a lot more about this robotics application soon. But first, welcome everyone to Imagine 2022 at the Computer History Museum. Amazing to see you all here. We love this venue. When we use this, we're also helping support the great work they do here in conserving all this amazing compute technology that inspired me, at least as a child, with my first Commodore 64 that a friend recently got me again. So I have my own Commodore 64 again at home. So I find that super inspiring. 3 years ago, just over, Jan and I started Edge Impulse. And we could never have imagined the over 100,000 machine learning workloads that people have created using this tooling. All the innovation, all the energy, all the invention that goes into this is really inspiring for us. So Imagine couldn't be a better name for this event. This is all about bringing all the most amazing workloads, solutions, and enterprise applications, nature conservation applications in the world together here. And we're here to help you network and gain the value that you're looking for from data and machine learning. So use today for you, learn all about the amazing stuff that's being worked on in our community, and we're here to connect you together. Now, the applications of machine learning might be endless, but we have to remember that it's not automatic that we're going to see all that value from machine learning. There's a few things that we need to focus on doing, and they're hard. We need developers, and we need AI workloads. Without these two things, the market that we're in won't blossom. It won't grow. So I'm going to talk a lot today about our ecosystem. How are we connecting developers with money, and eventually money to silicon? Right? So this is a very hard thing to connect, so I'll do my best. But first, I want to talk a little bit more about robotics. So what you saw outside has been many, many months in the making, a partnership between Ready Robotics, Edge Impulse, and industrial sensor maker Balev. And what we're able to do is insert AI directly in the robotics process. And this is important. It's not just on the top somewhere else. It's in the actual assembly cycle. Every robot has a very specific workload. Depends on what it picks up, how fast. That means that every robot has a very specific sensor signal signature. So what we're able to do here is tune a very precise AI anomaly detection algorithm on the exact sensor usage pattern of that robot sitting out there. We actually had to recalibrate this algorithm when we brought this to the Computer History Museum because we're one floor higher than our office in San Jose. So it's a great example of why you need to be able to do AI tuning, AI modeling right on the robot. And what happens here is anytime we do anything, so when I touch that robot, we get an anomaly just like that. And that enables us to do completely new things with condition monitoring, efficiency monitoring of these robotic cycles, maximizing the speed of the robot before we have an anomaly. Human safety. Is somebody touching the robot? For example, my CMO put his finger in the robot clamper the other day. Do not let the marketing people anywhere near the robot. That's the new rule. But how does this all work? We're able to connect the sensors from inside the robot, so robots come with things like torque sensors, position sensors, current sensors built in, together with external sensors. So we took an industrial BALF sensor you can use on industrial machinery, we connected that to the arm. That all gets integrated through what's known as Forge OS. And Forge OS is what Ready Robotics does to kind of generalize, like we do in HAL layers in embedded systems, they're doing this for robotics. They've then taken all those sensor streams and made a very simple UI that says, choose these sensors, send it to the AI engine, send it to Edge Impulse. And so we're enabling that very, very simple user experience. Choose the sensors, now I want to send this to the AI thingy. And this is designed for a technician in the field, at the factory, setting up a new workload. That data goes to Edge Impulse. We train a new anomaly detection model based on that data, and then we very simply build a small Linux package, send that back down to the robot, and boom, that's standalone forever. That model will run on the robot. This afternoon, Jan's going to talk about a new technology that we've been developing called on-device calibration, on-device learning, for the purpose of retraining this model on that robot in the field. Again, no internet connectivity needed, because that robot might be slightly different, like our problem outside. To move the robot to the second floor, we had to recalibrate that robot. This, I think, is going to start a whole new revolution in data and robotics. And we're going to see that in every kind of robot form factor, even these small little vacuum cleaners that you have around your house. These will be enabled with AI-type anomaly detection going forward. You're going to hear a lot more about this morning. So we're going to have Ben, the CEO and founder of Ready Robotics, talk about industrial automation and machine learning, and Hubertus from BALF talk about industrial and the edge. Really deep into the industrial space, we'll hear a lot more. Now, we're here together for a reason. My motto for the last year since Imagine has been, our job is to put ML in real products. That's what we're here for. That's what drives us day in and day out. How do we use machine learning in real stuff? But it's not just us. It's not just the Edge Impulse folks. It's all of you are here together to put machine learning in real products. And it takes a village, right? We can't do it alone. We're only developing some tools for doing parts of this. So all of us have a role to play in the ecosystem and the value chain for machine learning. But there's three things we need to create that value in ML. Developers, workloads, and then working partnerships. It's not enough that we sell something on our own somewhere and try to get people to do machine learning. No, we have to integrate with silicon. We have to integrate with device OEMs. System engineers have to integrate us in robotic systems. System integrators need to install those robotic systems at the end customer. And eventually, somebody has to figure out how to provide value for the enterprise, because that's where the money is. So that whole value chain has to come together. And I'm going to explain how. Now, the value in this market is massive. I've been sitting on a number for the last 3 years. When we were first starting up Edge Impulse, we looked at what's the market size potential for AI in the enterprise. And it's big. $250 billion. And it's taken me 3 years to understand what this actually means. I've been thinking about this for 3 years. And the only emoji, my design people were kind of like, oh my God, he put a pot of gold on the side. The only emoji I could come up with was a pot of gold, because it's such a massive amount of value. And that value isn't just AI for tools, that's everything. Silicon, devices, systems, AI engineering, tooling, cloud infrastructure, and the value that the enterprise itself finds from AI. The money saved, the money gained, where the technology is used. Now, recently, ABI came up with a new report that tiny ML SaaS platforms, that's what EdgeImpulse does, will be a $1 billion market by 2030. So, $1 billion away from this market. I'll take that, thank you very much. $1 billion, we'll keep that. But that means there's $249 billion for all of the rest of you. I think that's a fair deal. So, what does that mean in practice? How do we unlock $249 billion? Now, this is a decade-long project, right? This is not going to happen overnight. $249 billion comes from the enterprise. So remember, these are small enterprises, medium-sized enterprises, large enterprises. Everybody is going to have to find that value in the end. And this is kind of a trickle-up, trickle-down economy, if you think about it this way, because this all starts with the developer. And this is where we have to connect this back to the developer every single time. We need developers who can generate useful machine learning AI workloads. Today, our developer ecosystem just hit 50,000 developers. And that's impressive, but it's not nearly enough. Because in the 3 years since we've existed, we've generated over 115,000 machine learning workloads. And that sounds impressive, but that might get us $5 billion out of that 249 if we keep on like this. We need 20x, maybe even 100x the number of workloads that we have here. Let's say 10 million plus workloads. We need probably 1 million developers in our ecosystem in order to get to this level of scale. And that's what drives Jan and I. How do we get to 1 million developers so we can go enable this whole thing to happen, this ecosystem? Now, those workloads are really important because the workloads drive the edge compute. All of those AI workloads, those useful things that we can do with machine learning on all different types of silicon, all different types of edge devices, drives the value through the enterprise and back down to this ecosystem. So I calculate that there's around $149 billion that will go to device OEMs, system manufacturers, infrastructure, system integration, all that work that's needed to go and develop the solutions that include AI. It's a lot of value that will go here. And eventually, that value will also make its way down to silicon. So a lot of us are from the silicon industry. We care a lot about how we see this. We often think about this bottoms up, right? Oh, silicon's going to be a $10 billion market and this. But where does that actually come from? Well, it comes from these device OEMs. So we expect $70 billion to come into AI-specific hardware in this space. But again, it won't without the workloads. So how do we go about scaling ML workloads? Well, that's what we spend a lot of our time thinking about. We've got several big initiatives to help us go even faster in this. We think about this as the challenge of scaling machine learnings at scale. So of course, our goal is to expand to 1 million developers. We've got an exciting announcement later that we're going to be making on one thing we're doing to achieve that. We've got to enable the community to share these workloads. It's not enough that we keep them all private, right? It sounds great that, oh, I developed these AI, I kept it to myself on my own laptop, but that's not going to help us teach a whole generation of people, help other people in our industry to succeed. We have to share. So we're launching a whole series of new features to make the sharing of entire ML workloads very, very easy. Share and clone, just like we do with GitHub. That's what's helped open source proliferate. We're going to do the same with machine learning. But not just workloads, the algorithms themselves. How do we get a new DSP feature extraction algorithm and use that on a specific piece of hardware that has a DSP part that's really good at this? How do we find that and use it? How do we share a pre-trained model? How do we share a transfer learning model? How do we share a new architecture across our ecosystem? We're figuring this out, and we're going to have more and more features to enable that. We also have to work with the data science folks because they have a lot of knowledge to share into our developer ecosystem. So we have a whole new initiative called Bring Your Own Model. Really deep Python SDK tools, integrations with things like weights and biases for observability that will now be natively part of EdgeImpulse. So you can go directly from data science tooling and go EdgeImpulse, import EdgeImpulse, EdgeImpulse pull model, EdgeImpulse push model, EdgeImpulse model performance on this type of silicon, EdgeImpulse deploy model to this type of silicon, right from your command line, right from your notebook. We think that'll be a game changer to kind of bring these two developer communities together. And then finally, we're thinking far ahead. We're not thinking just about, oh, how do we get developers using this today? What about the next generation? I've got my 14-year-old daughter here at Edge Impulse this year because I wanted her to see what I do and what we're doing, the really interesting work we do with AI. And that's about training that next generation with education, something I care deeply about. So this year, we launched a university program that's been very successful. So go to this, anybody that's involved with universities that cares about this technology, have them go to edgeimpulse.com/university. They can sign up for our free program. We provide free hardware, course curriculum that we've developed together with Harvard, and much, much more to help them get their students and their researchers using this technology. So we have already 300 universities active with this. We'll do another 500 next year. So this is how we scale ML workloads. And this is going to take 5 years, 10 years. It's a mission that we're on that's very long term. I want to talk more about machines, but first, let's talk about something even more important, the health of humans. I think of this as one of the major challenges and major opportunities for us with machine learning technology, digital health. And there's a lot of challenges that we have. Pandemics are rising at a faster and faster rate. How do we respond to these in a faster and faster way? We've actually been involved with developing COVID-19 rapid response algorithms to detect onset of disease. In just months after the pandemic broke out, we were already developing algorithms for this with partners. How do we do more of that? How do we deal with an aging population? Elderly care is becoming a bigger and bigger problem. We need innovations to help us deal with independent living for elderly people. And then finally, healthcare costs are pretty out of control. For those of you that live here in the US, my wife went to ask a question at the hospital the other week, $8,000. Before insurance, of course, whatever that means. That's out of control, right? How do we use technology to improve the health of reduce the cost of healthcare in a way that lets us access the care we need and stay healthier? And these are all things that we believe digital health and machine learning can be a big part of. And there's several things coming together to make this happen. A few years ago, I would have said that health is not ready, right? The technology's not there, it's difficult, it's so highly regulated, but that's changing. We're going to hear a really interesting keynote today that's going to tell us more about this. Now, I believe this is actually going to be one of the fastest growing spaces in this market. New advances in MEMS sensors and this low-power silicon that we're all producing, those are coming together in a big way. And that combination enabled us to do things like the Aura Ring. Really amazing piece of hardware, software engineering that can measure my sleep health for days on end. I don't even think about charging this thing until I'm like, oh, it's out of battery. Was that 5 days ago or a week ago I charged it? I barely remember. That's amazing. Years ago, that would not have been possible. We're then able to use biosensing, ECG, PPG, EEG, skin conductance, skin temperature, audio, how are you breathing, how are you talking, video, how are you behaving, is it normal for an elderly person, for example, normal behavior. We're able to combine all of these sensors together and use data, real data from the field, real data from clinical studies, to then approximate the algorithms that might cost tens of thousands of dollars in the laboratory. We can approximate those with a $100, $50, $200 device on every human being, and that's game-changing. So let's talk some more about some really amazing companies that we're working with in this space. NoWatch, Dutch startup, using this technology to do really interesting things in mental well-being. So they're combining complex sensors that we haven't seen combined before. PPG, but also skin temperature, skin conductance, which enables us to measure cortisol. And if we can measure cortisol, we can understand the stress level of a human being. Combining that all together, we can get deeper into heart rate, blood oxygen, many, many more things. So what this does is it enables someone to wear a watch that doesn't tell you the time. NoWatch is called this because it doesn't actually have a time face. There's no digital interface. It's a crystal. There's 15 different crystal elements that you can put in that. And right away, my daughter was like, oh, that's cool. That's a good sign that this is going to take off. And instead, it concentrates on measuring your well-being, kind of like the Aura Ring doesn't vibrate or tell you anything. It just tells you every once in a while in your app, how are you doing? This is similar. So I think this is going to be really, really interesting for younger generations that don't want digital interruption. They want to know how they're doing, what's their mental well-being, how they minimize their stress level, maximize their performance. Another great example of where this technology is going is Know Labs, a company we've been working with to do the impossible, which is achieve non-invasive glucose monitoring. So Know Labs uses an RF scanning technology, and it's directly from Star Trek. When I saw what this thing does and how it works, it's amazing. It's a little device you put your wrist on. It emits very wideband RF energy, goes through your body tissue, comes back with extremely accurate antennas to measure the absorption of RF energy at different frequencies. And by analyzing this, you see some of what the data looks like here. By analyzing this, we are able to go deep and detect the concentration of specific molecules. In this case, glucose, but it could be anything else. It could be, did an elderly person take their medicine, for example? So this is game-changing. They call it bio-radiofrequency identification, bio-RFID. 3 to 5 times less expensive than today's options like continuous glucose monitors, which involve putting needles through your skin, and over 95% accurate, so more accurate than today's CGMs can achieve. So this will be really game-changing. I'm going to show you a little video about what does it mean in practice when these guys go into clinical studies and start collecting data for their data sets.
Hi, I'm Steve, Chief Product Officer at Know Labs. Here's what's happening with our human trials in Seattle. First, participants learn about the technology. That's Tasha explaining the process. After entering the room, Nicole shows them how to do the test. She's a pro at this now. Then, they drink 35 milligrams of fast-acting glucose. We're using version 4 of the prototype sensor for the trials. We're currently building generation 1 of the portable KnowU product. It's progressing really well, and we'll be able to share more details once it's in our hands. Now, it's time to do some non-invasive measurements using the Know Labs sensor. Every 5 minutes, the participants just place their arms on the sensors for 60 seconds, and the sensor automatically takes its measurements. And just like that, there's the data. And now they can lift their arms or move around. We're using all of this data to refine the algorithm as we prepare for FDA trials. It's going to take time because breakthrough technology doesn't make itself. But the data science progress Phil shows me on almost a daily basis is amazing. We take a fingerstick reading as a reference with every non-invasive measurement. Seeing the invasive nature of traditional fingersticks up close and personal reminds me how important this work is. And not to mention, the amount of consumables needed, whoa. As the human trials continue, we'll be collecting thousands of measurements, so the data science team has everything they need to get the algorithms production ready and even better than they are now. Since accuracy and stability are key metrics for an FDA approval, we're taking every step to make sure we get this right. We couldn't be more excited about what we're doing at Know Labs. We hope you enjoyed seeing what we're up to with our human trials in Seattle.
So if you're ever up to Seattle, you can actually participate in this study yourself. You can apply on their website to be in that bench, getting measured for glucose. David in our team is out in the demo area. He's done this himself. It's a lot of fun. Steve Kent, the Chief Product Officer of Know Labs, is here today. You want to track him down and talk to him more about the amazing work that they're doing and what does it mean to really scale up data collection for clinical studies. And that's really the big hook for machine learning and data infrastructure technology in this space, is that it's really hard to go from measuring one person to measuring tens or hundreds or thousands of people in clinical settings. Because when we're collecting data sets for humans, it's a little bit like when we collect data sets for machines. We have to hook up the laboratory with lots of measurement equipment, right? If you've ever been to a sleep study, I've been to a couple sleep studies, you get measured with tons of EEG sensors, ECG sensors, motion detectors, SpO2, and many more medical grade sensors attached to you. We have to collect all that data at the clinical level together with the cheaper sensor data, for example, these rings or the no-lab sensor or any other sensor that we want to measure. And we have to collect all that data together into a pipeline that's not operated by engineering nerds. These pipelines are operated by nurses in medical facilities. So how do we get a nurse to upload a very complex file into a system that can then get processed? And this is the type of thing we're setting up together with partners to make it easier to go from 1 to thousands of patients being measured. The other big challenge we have is that as we create these data sets, the algorithm process is really iterative. This is not just to collect a massive data set on health and all of a sudden you're magically producing an algorithm. Not at all. We have to start pretty small. Let's collect data from 10 people. Let's go derive what algorithms are useful, what derivatives of the sensors are useful, and then we'll go one step deeper, improve that. We might be missing some data, and then we can go to 100 people and then to 1,000. And eventually we get to the quality that we can use for things like FDA approvals. And this is true both on the consumer health side, so non-FDA, and the regulated FDA side of medical devices. So super interesting. The other thing we have to do is this feedback loop. It's not enough to just collect data in the laboratory. Once we get this data out in the field in real wearable devices, we have to be able to collect data back. And this is something we call active learning, which we're going to talk about more in Jan's keynote in the afternoon. How do we start with small amounts of data and then feedback from the field back into your data set and make use of that in real machine learning work? There's something else we're doing to accelerate this work as well. We produced a new reference design together with Nordic, Sentient, and TestSolve to really show people end-to-end how to solve these types of health data algorithm problems. So accelerating human health from an entire infrastructure setup, so we show how to do this kind of clinical data collection at scale. We show how to use active learning to collect new data, reference data sets for things like ECG, PPG to HRV derivatives, so showing how the algorithms work in practice. And then finally, how to deploy it on real hardware. So this has a Nordic NRF53, multiple Sentient NDP 101s, and then we can collect PPG, vibration, temperature, audio, all in the same form factor. So this is going to be available for all of our enterprise customers and get access to this, use it however they like. And we're going to do many more of these types of reference designs to get people started. We're not selling hardware. It's not our business, but we'll give this away to people that need it. And finally, I'm not the expert in health. I've learned a lot in the last 3 years working with customers. Later this morning, we're going to hear from Caitlin, who is the expert in this, the founder of Clue Health, that did diabetes management in a really interesting way using AI, and most recently an executive at Medtronic. We're going to have a really interesting deep dive into digital health. Now, what about the health of machines? We talked about this earlier. We saw this in robotics. It seems really interesting. But what about the rest of machines? And this gets me really excited because machines really do run our lives these days, right? We've got machinery in almost all systems that we touch. Industrial, buildings, healthcare facilities, you name it. There is machinery that's running everything that we do. How do we make sure those machines are operating efficiently? How do we run our industries more efficiently? And this is a quote from Gartner that really struck me. You know, we have some AI capabilities today, inference capabilities in some of our industrial equipment. But Gartner believes that pretty fast we're going to hit a 95% ratio, like we did in IoT when we went from 8-bit controllers to 32-bit controllers. That allowed us to do a lot more IoT in real hardware. Same thing's happening here. By 2025, 95% of industrial equipment will have not only analytics, but AI inference capabilities. Doesn't mean we're deploying there yet, because remember, if we don't generate the workloads, we don't have a market. So our job is to generate workloads with developers that fill up all this capacity and make use of it. IoT, when we designed it, had some design flaws. So I was part of the IoT, and we did some things wrong. We pushed all the analytics to the cloud. Mistake. Because there's not much bandwidth from these IoT devices. So when you push all the data to the cloud, you've got this little tiny pipe, which means we sample the temperature every 10 minutes, and then we average it, and then we do other crazy things, which basically means we get like this very rough sampled data stream coming to the cloud. We don't know the context of what actually happened when this went on from any kind of trusted source. So we kind of end up with like a slow data log to kind of understand what's happening in the field. It's useful, but it's not nearly as useful if we could use all the sensor data. That's something else when we started at Impulse. We ran across a statistic that 99% of sensor data is discarded. We only use 1% today in IoT. How do we use the 99%? And the answer is machine learning and data. Because machine learning allows us to collect quality data sets right from the field. So the full data from the full sensor with knowledge of what's happening. Remember, we always need labeling. So expert knowledge that, okay, the machine broke at this time. Great, that's a label. We're going to use that. And then we can generate inference that runs right at the edge and makes use of all the sensor bandwidth. There's no limit for us in how much sensor bandwidth we can use on device because it's massive reduction in data. We go from full sensor bandwidth to the machine broke, right? That's the answer. That's very low bandwidth. We can send that over anything. Pigeons if we need to, right? And so using this, we can translate this data to actionable insights, better efficiency, so much more in these industries. And that's what's got us excited about machinery, is that it's a direct fit for what we're doing with machine learning. Today, we're announcing a new partnership in industrial that I think is going to be super, super game-changing. Together with Lexmark, we partnered to bring machine learning development very deeply into the Lexmark Optra Edge solution. And Optra Edge is a full software, hardware, AI deployment, device management solution, end-to-end, with actual physical compute devices is one of them. So this is the CX1000 quad-core ARM V8 processor. They've got versions with high-end NVIDIA GPU hardware as well. You can choose. These will be ready to go, integrated with Edge Impulse already built in a way that it can be deployed with a click of a button. You can collect data with a click of a button. We really ease the deployment of this stuff end to end. And there's an important reason for that. I showed you that value chain earlier, right? The value chain didn't stop at device OEMs. It's not that we enable machine learning for the people that make crazy, sophisticated devices like Aura. We actually have to integrate this all the way up to the enterprise level. And that's what Lexmark is doing. Lexmark is selling directly into manufacturing, logistics, healthcare, retail, for the end users. So we have to enable not only the super deep developers who are hacking up hardware, we've got to enable the end technical people, right? The folks that are in the field solving the problems. And we're doing that together with Lexmark. I'll show you a little video. One of the workloads that they've developed for factory use, so automatic quality control, testing what is in the SKUs of stuff that's coming after the manufacturing line. Did we forget a sticker? Did we forget a panel, right? Did we install something wrong? There's so many different SKUs in manufacturing these days. This is a major problem. So Lexmark's outside. You're going to hear more from a keynote soon. It's outside. Check out the demonstrations. And this is really changing the way we go all the way into the factory. But what does it take to do this? And this is just as complicated as it is in digital health. And maybe even more so because in machines, we tend to have a lack of data. So we talk to lots of German companies, and German companies are funny. They say, yeah, we make the best machine ever. Hubertus is laughing over here. We make the best machine ever. We're like, great, can we get some bad data? Some data from when your machines are breaking? They're like, no, our machines do not break. Ever, right? We're like, okay, this is going to be a bit of a problem. So we really often can only start with a little bit or even no data about what's good. We're never going to get bad data from these manufacturers. So we have to think of a new way to loop this process of creating algorithms. And this, again, comes back to active learning. That's why this is so important. We're able to produce anomaly detection algorithms now, like we did on the robot, with very small amounts of data, maybe just a few minutes, tens of minutes, maybe an hour of data. We start with that. We generate anomaly detection that's very simple. It just operates on good. It tells you when it's bad or different. And then we deploy that in the field and use this active learning feedback loop to collect the interesting data we've never seen before on device. Doesn't have to be connected in the internet all the time. We can do it on an SD card if we need to. But we feed that data back to the data set, and then we start generating more and more sophisticated algorithms with the engineering team. So this is a continuous process with the customer. And then again, once we're on device, we can start doing on-device calibration and learning to go tweak this for specific machines. So we can create a meta model, that's how I think of this. The meta model that's for that class of machine, we deploy it with the customer, and we tell the customer, great, when the machine's operating normally, you hit this button. We'll go collect some sample data of what normal is for this machine, tell us how long a cycle is. Is it 5 minutes, 1 minute to get through the whole thing that the machine does? And then we'll calibrate this thing for exactly what your machine is tuned to do. And I think this is going to be the solution that helps us scale in industries, across all industries, with machine learning. Again, for machine health, we produced a really interesting reference design together with Relock and Renesas. You'll be able to see this outside, for measuring all sorts of machines. And this is a piece of hardware that shows you how to make the ultimate machine health device. So we use current, motor current signature analysis included, vibration and audio in this device, together with a Renesas RA series MCU to go do this kind of active learning pipeline, do on-device calibration, and show the whole end-to-end solution. This is something, again, that will be available for getting started. If somebody needs to figure out a device or think about how to design a device, this is a great way to start. And we've got some amazing experts joining us soon on stage to talk about this. Brambles will be talking about applications for EdgeML in the supply chain. Samsung will be here talking about EdgeML in the smart home with empathy for AI. That's going to be really interesting. And then Lexmark will be talking more about the scaling of AI at the edge for the real industrial users in the afternoon. Now, it's not enough to go talk about scaling the AI workloads. We also have to think about what's happening with our silicon ecosystem. That's something we care very deeply about. Already today, we've done a lot with silicon. You probably noticed that we care deeply about scaling across all the hardware that our partners need. So we support the widest range of hardware ever in the AI industry, and we're only getting started. So if some of you are thinking like, oh my God, EdgeML is doing so much on different hardware, we're not even close to getting started yet. We're going to do this not across just the silicon, but across all the end devices, the OEM devices, the cameras, all the gadgets you can name that you can program AI in, we're going to support that hardware or find ways to support it. And silicon is only getting more interesting because it's enabling us to do more and more sophisticated things. So last year, we announced support for the Sentient NDP100. And this was really a game changer. We used to stop with inference at kind of MCUs with MPU or with FPUs. So Cortex M4 class devices. And that's where we had to stop with sensor and audio applications. With Sentient, we have specialized NPUs that let us go and do that all the way down at the ultra-low power level, 150 microwatts. So that was a game changer, but the industry hasn't stopped there. We're now optimizing for all the MCUs up the line. So we just announced support for Renesas RA series MCUs. With Infineon, we have support for PSoC 6 and soon the PSoC 63. With Synaptics, we've supported the first multi-core MCU that has both DSPs, NPUs, and MCU cores, all working together so we can get low power with higher performance. So this lets us do things like image recognition at low power, first of its kind that we've supported. Sentient then announced the NDP200. So this brings image recognition down to low power specialized NPU. So think about that as always on vision, right? If we wanted to understand, did somebody walk past this camera, we can use a part like this to do that and then wake up something bigger to do classification. Aleph Semiconductor with us has released an entire series of Ensemble products that are interesting because we're combining multi-core MCUs with multi-core MPUs, so Cortex-A, together with highly accelerated NPUs. So that's a whole family of different parts that lets us choose what we're looking for the higher end of things like video on MCUs. It's going to be really interesting with this part because it's fast enough. And finally, at the high end, we've just announced support with Renesas for the RZ series of parts. So this is highly accelerated Cortex-A. With Texas Instruments, we're working on the TD4VA, highly accelerated MPUs, GPU, multi-core ARM. So think about NVIDIA kind of class performance on very highly integrated SoCs. And then, of course, this Optra Edge type of hardware where we can have a whole range of hardware with different acceleration options that we can deploy on. So this enables us to do video applications, pose detection, behavioral analysis, and applications like that. And this seems really interesting, right? There's a lot happening here. Oh my God, we're only getting started. This is crazy, this industry, because in the last year, silicon IP has started to rise, and it's giving us a lot of new, very interesting options in what we're doing. Of course, we have the typical candidates. ARM has GPU components we can use for training machine learning. That's great. We've been already integrating NPUs from ARM and Cadence into parts like this. DSPs have already started to be used for machine learning, so we have support for the HiMax Synopsys-based Arc DSP. We're going to see a lot more DSPs used for this kind of thing. And just recently, we partnered with BrainChip to bring neuromorphic architectures into Edge Impulse for the first time. So now we have the support for specialized spiky neural networks that lets us go higher end. We can go higher end MCU, we can go into the MPU side, and we can do different types of workloads and training applications we weren't able to do before. So this gets really interesting with neuromorphic technology, maybe combined with other techniques in parallel. And like I said, we're only getting started. There's really interesting things happening here. Pollen AI is a new partner of ours, Pollen Technologies. They're doing configurable, programmable AI analog tooling. So designing chips with specialized AI processing in the analog domain on demand. So basically, you can design a workload, decide how it should work for audio, and you can tape it out and produce a chip at volume that does exactly that at low power. So this brings this kind of like super specialized AI all the way down to the very low power domain. That's mind-blowing. I don't even know what we're going to be able to do with that, but we'll find out. And then we have new, really interesting things like Think Silicon, who's here today. Think Silicon's combining very low power GPUs with NPUs at the same time. So for things like wearables with displays, we'll be able to integrate not only the graphics, but the inference capabilities all in the same form factor. This is getting interesting, and I think it's only going to get more interesting. And the reason is machine learning is developing all the time, too. We're seeing things like transformers hit this industry. And transformers are going to make our brains explode, where we have to figure out completely new architectures for dealing with the AI workloads that we're producing. So this is only getting started, and it's getting more interesting all the time. We have to help people scale workloads all the way through to the end customers. We talked about what we've done with Lexmark. We're now going to be doing that with everybody who's interested to bring machine learning down to their end customers. And this is what we call white label. Deeper integrations, putting Edge Impulse into your products and your systems, how you deploy firmware to the end devices, how you collect data. We're doing deep branded experiences. So this is an example of what the Lexmark portal for AI engineering looks like. It's very specified to how they're integrating with their end-to-end system. And then finally, this allows us to do private analytics. So what's happening with the boards that people are developing AI on specifically for one vendor. So we're here to enable everybody's ecosystem. We're not here to just have the Edge Impulse experience. This is something new that we're doing. And I want to talk about this with a special announcement. We've been working together with Arduino to bring this kind of technology to all the developers in the world. I want to welcome Massimo Banzi on stage with me. Welcome, Massimo.
Thank you.
Please go ahead and take a mic. Always amazing.
Is it on? Okay.
Amazing to have you here in
Thank you.
Mountain View with
It's great to be here.
You probably feel the same thing about the computer.
Oh, I love this place. I love this place. So I'm happy that you're organizing this event here. But I'm also happy about the fact that we now do this white label edition together. I think it's important. We use your technology. We love it. And so we're working with a lot of small and medium enterprises. And we wanted to bring these tools closer to them based on our hardware, but also based on our cloud platform. So this will be integrated into our cloud platform. So we have a special new sort of cloud platform for pro users, which is the one that's this kind of small and medium enterprises use the most. So for example, in this special version, the people who are signed up to that, they get extra compute time. And so yeah, we're trying to kind of, simplify this technology and bring it to a wider audience.
And I love the spin on SMEs, because that's a segment that we ourselves have trouble reaching. We can You deal with individual developers or large enterprises or large enterprise partners. But it's hard for us to work with SMEs. There's lower volume, there's sometimes specialized help they need, and we're not able to provide it. So I'm really excited about this special Arduino Pro tier where now you can give them the resources they need to go do ML. Tell me a little bit about what this looks like as an integrated experience. I know you and I and Jan, we all care about UX deeply. What does the Arduino machine learning UX look like when you go to the tools?
Well, basically, you know, there's going to be a specialized website within our cloud that someone reaches. Essentially, they get the same functionality as your platform, but it is integrated in the overall experience of the Arduino website. And there's a number of further integration so this is kind of a pre-announcement. It's not available yet, but we are integrating the whole tools deeply into our cloud so you can import data from the cloud into this tool. So it will become more and more integrated into the whole cloud experience that we give to customers.
And that means things like single sign-on with an Arduino account.
Yeah, totally, yes.
Deploying data to the data sets,
exactly.
maybe deploying the firmware directly to a project.
Yeah.
It's going to be amazing. It's extra work today that we have to do to put all this together.
But I think it's important as a tool to make it more available to a wider audience. So I'm really glad we're doing this.
Perfect.
Thank
you, Massimo, for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.